Hello, good evening. I'm not going to introduce you because my agenda is so lengthy.
I know. We thought an introduction would not be necessary. Also, really planning the evening is not necessary, but Sally tried. She even brought her iPad here with what we were going to talk about tonight. She's planned it like a proper journalist. Sal, could you read out what the agenda is tonight? Yeah, read it out.
So I actually brought luggage to the venue in order to have my agenda with me. My agenda, let's just get it out of the way, seeing as we're in a church. My agenda said fannies, sex stuff, dick advisor, and fame.
Yeah. Welcome to tonight. This is what we'll be discussing. That's as much planning as we've done.
It's what our Lord would have wanted, I'm sure.
Well, we're just going to continue what we did. We went for a very pleasant lunch at the Chili Pickle earlier on.
We did.
You're going to hear me burping and probably farting all the way through this. It was a very pleasant thing. The last time I went there was for Sally's wedding, which was the drunkest event I've ever been to. At 5:30 in the afternoon, it was as if a plane full of drunk people had exploded in the sky and simply scattered them all over Jubilee Square. I've never seen people in a worse state. Well done, mate.
So we went back today and we tried to keep the love going, didn't we?
Yes, yeah. I had a couple of ciders, so you'll see me in relaxed mode tonight.
You love Brighton, don't you?
Yes, I was born here. I've got family here. I've banned them from coming tonight. Actually, it wasn't that difficult to make sure they didn't come. They've all made it very clear they don't want to hear me talking about masturbation. Last time I played here, I invited my brother along and I put him in the royal box. He was sitting next to David Gilmour from Pink Floyd. And halfway through the evening, I told the story about how our family's communal hairbrush, we only had one hairbrush because we were poor, had been my primary sex aid during my teenage years. And I could just hear my brother in the box going, "Aw, dude!" And then I saw him leave, and I've not spoken to him since, so yes.
Well, you've gone there, haven't you? We're already on fannies, and
Yes.
they're out the barracks. So, well, let's talk about fannies. You like talking about fannies quite a lot. There is some fanny talk in this book, How to Be Famous, but there's lots of fanny talk in How to Build a Girl.
Yes. I see it as my primary purpose to talk about sex as much as possible, really. I had all my sex education from reading books and watching TV and watching films because it was a time before internet pornography. And reading stuff as a teenage girl in the 80s and 90s, I never got the stuff that I wanted. If they wrote about sex, it would either be quite mysterious and misty. They would say something like, "and their bodies commingled in ecstasy, ... I was like, no, I want facts. Like, where's the hand? What's happening to the bumhole? Like, kind of, I want to be stepped through this like a manual. Or it would be written by men, and I would find that very distressing. The great authors, sort of Roth, Updike, Hemingway, Chandler. I mean, even when they're describing women, Raymond Chandler has that brilliant line where he says, she was the kind of dame that would make an archbishop kick in a stained glass window. And that is a brilliant line. It's absolutely gorgeous. But when you're reading that as a 14-year-old girl, you're like, but I'm just a fat 14-year-old girl in leggings who's just cheerful. Like, have I got to be a dame now? Have I got to make people destroy church property? That sounds exhausting. I can't do that.
Earlier.
And then when they would write about sex, for instance, Ian Fleming in one of the Bond books, you're kind of flicking through for the sex in the Bond books because I don't really care about spies. And he described one woman as having nipples like hazelnuts. And I was very confused at the time, not least because I confused it with walnuts. And secondly, at the time, my favourite flavour of ski yogurt was hazelnut flavour. And so it meant that every time I ate a hazelnut yogurt, I would feel both maudlin and slightly aroused, which is not what you want when you're 10. So I wanted to write books from a female point of view that was very specific, that was like a manual of fucking, basically. So you would, if you're a teenage girl picking it up, you're going to go out in the world and have your sex adventures. What is sex? I want you to learn it from my books because I don't want you to learn it from the main places that we learn about sex these days. The most famous sex at the moment is either in pornography, which I dislike. The idea that most young people now get their sex education from pornography horrifies me. I want to sit them all down and go, just so you know, that's not sex that you're watching. That's two people at work. It's very different. That is their job. And the tropes in it are still very distressing to me. It's still a man, generally, who looks like Burt Reynolds bumming a woman across a landing. The things that they're doing are horrible. The slapping of the bum, I don't understand. I am not a racehorse. I do not need to speed up. My clitoris is not there. If it is, I'll give you the money myself. Then there is the coming on the face. There's not that much in it for me. The problem with coming on a woman's face is that the eyes are on the face. Once you've had some spunk in your eye, you tend not to want someone to come on your face again. It's very difficult to keep a romantic mood going when it's gone in your eye and you're winking like a pirate. Just going, oh God, no, I'm glad you enjoyed that. Don't worry about me. I'm just gonna cry the spunk out. Just carry on, that's fine. And then, of course, the other most famous sex at the moment is 50 Shades of Grey. And again, I don't like this sex in 50 Shades of Grey because it's an enormous amount of admin. In order to have sex, you've got to find a billionaire, you've got to go in a helicopter, you've got to build a whole fucking room, you've got to go to Halfords and buy some cable ties. Meanwhile, every other animal on Earth is just simply having some sex. Cats are doing it on roofs in the rain, and like kind of, where's the spontaneity? So I wanted to write stuff that was not like 50 Shades of Grey, that was not like pornography, that was realistic about all the different kinds of sex that there are. And I've managed to narrow it down to 3 kinds of sex in the book.
Well, what are the 3 kinds of sex?
Thank you, Sally.
That question just came to me. That wasn't on my iPad.
The 3 sexes that I have concentrated are thus. 1, I wanted to write a great fuck. I wanted to write straight out pornography about the best sex ever. This is pornography about pornography. It's the best kind of sex that I could come up with. And I really think that everyone should write pornography at some point. I would recommend that as a hobby. I think we need to get the facts out there and all talk about what we would like. So I've put the best sex that I could ever imagine in one of my sexes. The second sex that I've written about is a woman, the character Johanna, who is not based on me at all in any way, shape or form.
No, in no way.
Absolutely not, no.
She's a stranger to you.
Yeah, there's a legal disclaimer at the front of the book and I'll fight anyone who says it's based on me. Anyway, so when I took this guy's virginity, because the thing is that the virginity taking that you read about in books is always a man taking a woman's virginity. And for a woman, that's usually one of the worst sexes. That's the one with the blood, that's the one with the pain, that's the one with the fear of getting pregnant, even though you've made him put on 6 condoms, and come in the bathroom, inside a sleeping bag, on a balcony. You're still very scared you might get pregnant. Whereas when you are taking a man's virginity, I found that I assume this kind of persona of like a lovely 19th century strumpet who lives in a lovely farm up in yonder hills and has come down to the village fair to sell her pigs. I have a pig under each arm. I've sold them at market. I have my pig money. I've spent my pig money on cider. And I see a nervous boy yonder.
In no way based on you in any way.
What is this I spy? A nervous boy yonder, who sorely needs his balls emptied. Hello. And the wheat has been sheaved in the fields and the moon is full and we take the cider jug and I have sex with him and he's very grateful. And that's the best kind of sex to have. Claudia Winkleman, I gave the best quote that I've ever heard about sex. They said to her, what do you seek in a sexual partner? And she said, gratitude.
Very important.
It is. I always, whenever I have sex with my husband, at the end of it, we always both say thank you to each other. Yeah, it's important to keep things civil. Thank you, that was lovely. And then we say, I can't believe you don't have to pay for that. That's
It's free.
It's free.
It's free.
It's free. And once you've got the miracle of the IUD, no worrying about pregnancy at all. Do it anywhere you like. Hurrah!
And what is your 3rd type of sex?
The 3rd type of sex, I'm glad you asked me that, Sally. Drives the plot of the book. So Johanna, who is in no way based on me, it's the mid-90s at a point where comedy is the new rock and roll, and she has sex with a young, hot, troubled comedian who is no way based on a real character. And it goes very badly wrong. An incident occurs and she regrets this sexual act very badly, and the consequences play out over the book. She's gossiped about, she experiences sexual shame, and she does not know how to deal with this. What can you do if you're one girl and you went and had sex with someone to be nice? And suddenly it's a problem. You are being shamed for it. People are gossiping about you. What can you do when you're one girl on your own? And I had come up with the idea of this book 10 years ago because it's the second in a trilogy, so I've always known that this was the plot and I've always known what was going to happen. This big scene where she solves it, which I can't tell you because it'll ruin the surprise. And as I was writing the book, the whole Harvey Weinstein thing kicked off. And so I was writing what was happening in the world, and it's such a gift if you're a writer. The sort of every so often, you work on projects for so long, and so rarely when you're writing a book do you go, oh my God, this is happening in the world. I am now fictionalizing and writing what is happening, what is a huge news event. So I had winged wings for the last couple of months that I was writing it. It was like, yes, this is the right time to be writing this book.
It is absolutely still relevant. The fact that she has this terrible shaming experience. Well, first of all, that experience she has starts off with bad, unsatisfying sex.
Yes.
So before we even get to the humiliation, it's bad, unsatisfying sex, and then it becomes humiliating. And those stories, while they're not the same as assault, they're not the same as rape, but they are stories that have started to be told in tandem.
And it's very important to separate the two out. Like, kind of, there was, Me Too is such an amazing and important movement. And the stuff that's happening there is incredible, and it will change our culture. But things started to get blurred quite quickly, because we had the Me Too thing. And Me Too is about rape. It's about criminal acts, alleged criminal acts. These are things that you'll go to jail for. It's a very straight line on that. And then, because we still are so confused about sex and we so rarely talk about this, a whole load of other stories started to come out, women talking about their experiences.
It was like a cork had been popped, and
Yes.
all of these stories that people wanted to say for so many years came out in a tidal wave.
Totally.
Yeah.
But there was a confusion of the boundaries. There were category errors made. Like, for instance, the Aziz Ansari story. I don't know if anybody read that blog. A woman who met the comedian Aziz Ansari, went back to his flat, wanted to have sex with him, but the evening just turned shit. It wasn't scary, nothing criminal happened, it was a really shit shag. He was putting his fingers down her throat, it just wasn't nice, it wasn't polite and it wasn't fun, but it was not criminal. But that was lumped in with the whole Me Too movement, and it's very important that we separate those two things out. Me Too is criminal acts. There's this whole other thing that we do need to talk about, terrible sex and impoliteness and men not knowing what women want and being brought up on pornography. And so what I suggest is that we invent a thing called Dick Advisor, where we talk about bad sexual experiences and rate them out of 10. Like, that's what we need to do. To discuss all the different kinds of sex and review them and separate the two things out. So,
what would your categories be on Dick Advisor?
Well, you'd start, what in terms of how you'd rate it?
Yeah.
Well, you just start with politeness, basic courtesy. Like, kind of, is someone checking that you want to go along with this? Are they treating you like a human being rather than a receptacle for their balls? And then you would talk about sort of mood, you talk about things that are said, like, kind of, there's this whole sort of like pantheon of language around pornography that I, for one, don't want to hear. If someone says to me, does your pussy like this? I will simply look around for my cat. Like, kind of, I don't want to hear that. So yeah, we just need to talk about the vocabulary, the language, the politeness of the whole thing, and remembering to treat each other like two human beings, because I find it absolutely extraordinary that as a species we're screwing up sex, that there's so much confusion around it. Like, it should be the thing that chills you out and makes you happy and puts a smile on your face. And I wrote something once about how what I really wish for all women is that they can look back on their sex lives with a smile on their face. And I've had so many people coming up to me going, I cried when I read that. Like, kind of generally when I'm telling the stories about, my life and my sex life, most of them are bad stories.
Well, there are flashpoints, aren't there? Like pussy for me. Well, I'm too British for pussy, so I immediately just think someone's too American in their speaking. But you also immediately think, well, that's pornography.
Yes.
That's a learned term from pornography. That suggests to me that you're used to people saying that all the time.
Totally. And I would far rather someone was using 19th century language and going, shall I tumble you a bed? That's gonna get me going. That's going to get me to use the phrase wet. And that was another thing I really wanted to concentrate on this, because we don't talk about female sexuality. Things like, part of having sex, if you are aroused, is that you get wet. We don't have a word for that substance, for lubrication. We don't have a word for vaginal moisture. And that's a horrible phrase. I'm really sorry that I said vaginal moisture in a church in front of some people. But that's the craziness of it. Female sexuality is so little talked about that we don't have a word for that. There's a silence. We haven't constructed it. Similarly with female arousal, like, kind of, for men, when you get turned on, you get hard on, you get a lob on, you've got a chode, it's all this stuff. With women, what have we got? Wide on. That just sounds like a garage door opening. Like,
yeah.
That just sounds like something like overly capacious, like, kind of like I could park a car in it. Like, kind of, no, I want something that tells you it's tight as a rat trap. I'm packing some clench there. Like, kind of, I don't want wide on. So one of the things that I'm asking people to do today, I've been asking this on tour, if you have any great suggestions for either vaginal moistness or for female arousal, please tweet them to me. And if we have any good ones, I can read them out by the end of the evening. We've had some.
I thought you were going to say, if you have any good ones, I'll use them in my next shag.
Yes. I will say them to my husband when I get back tonight. Brace yourself, Pete. I'm coming in. So far, we've had Fanny Fireworks. for being aroused, like little fireworks are going off in your pants.
Fizzy knickers is another
I
one.
like fizzy knickers.
Yeah.
The brilliant dirty actress Miriam Margolyes said creaming my knickers.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed her filth, but for me, cream just sounds too dischargey.
It does.
I'm
it
worried.
sounds a bit thrushy.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, come down boots, Miriam, we can sort
Yeah.
you out.
Yeah.
So we
I'm not
need
in
this.
favour.
This is got, and this is the wonderful thing about culture, and this is why I enjoy talking about sex. There's a huge silence around these things. We need to invent new words. We need to invent new phrases. This is how we will have sex. This is how we will have conversations. And what a lovely job, a self-imposed job to have, coming up with ways to describe wet vaginas. I enjoy my job.
So are we talking about, I suppose when you talk about your Dick Advisor app, I'm guessing it's an app, it's
Yes.
2018 after all.
Yes.
It's sort of replacing the old network of people over the garden fence, isn't it? And so
Yes.
comparing notes, girls in the ladies' room saying, I shagged him.
Yes,
No.
exactly. And that is, I mean, before the internet was invented, there was a female internet. You know, when I moved down to London in the 90s,
100%.
it would happen in the toilets, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of, someone would go, oh, you know, he's a bad guy, like
Yeah.
kind of steer clear of him. That's not good news. But there is a certain kind of man, and I've written about him in here, that they sit in big cities and they wait for young girls to come down, bright young girls who want to hustle and make their way. And it's almost like you have to get past them to get into London. It's almost like their cocks are like a toll booth that is kind of over the A1 into London. And you have to kind of manipulate the penis out of the way or interact with the penis in order to get into London and enjoy your career.
It's very easy to get caught.
Yes.
In the barrier.
Oh, no, yes.
It is.
Clong.
I'm afraid I got caught in the barrier. You got caught in the barrier. I
right
think
in the
lots-
face.
Yeah, lots of women got caught in the barrier.
Yeah.
Well, you've written about this a lot in your book. Do you want to read some of it?
I would like to read from
Why
this.
don't you read some of it? Because this was inspired directly, wasn't it, by a conversation that we had about the men we couldn't get past at the barrier.
Are you saying that you want to make a copyright claim on this now, Sally? This conversation was directly from a conversation that I had with Sally when we were drunk.
Yeah, although depressingly, we all were able to chip in with first-hand.
Very much so. So this is a descriptor of bad men, and so the evil rock and roll comedian Jerry Sharp, who is not based on a real comedian, has brought Johanna back to his flat. In later years, when I'm having a long lunch with some girlfriends, and we take it in turns to talk about the worst men in the world, we come up with a list of things that, if you see them in a man's flat, tip you off that you are in the presence of a bad man. As they point out whilst drinking wine and howling, Jerry Sharp's flat had the full set. A framed John Coltrane poster, a framed Betty Blue poster, a bookshelf full of Hunter S. Thompson, Nietzsche, Jack Kerouac, Henry Miller, and books about the Third Reich. Several hats. Now, a hat-wearing man is always a sign, I find. It's almost as if they know that they need to indicate that they are evil, and they put a marker on their heads so that in a room at a party, you can scan the room, see the hat-wearing man, and just run away from them. A velvet frock coat. Again, a massive indicator that you are around a bad man. A man wearing a velvet frock coat thinks that he is a tortured poet. That is not who you want on your team for the next 30 years. Fuck off and rhyme your words somewhere else. An angry-looking cat and a litter full of cat shit. A litter tray full of cat shit. Some ironic Virgin Marys. The complete works of both The Fall and Frank Zappa. A pile of porn, a bottle of absinthe, and a coffee table with noticeable scratch marks from chopping out lines of cocaine. Any woman, when she sees these things, must run, they conclude, laughing and crying ruefully at the same time, because this is the house of a man who hates women. And they are correct. However, at the time, I was still only 19, and I had yet to learn this, so I just thought, cool, an edgy intellectual. You don't want to go out with an edgy intellectual. Here's the man you want to go out with. Someone with the physique of a womble, who is wearing a cardigan. He will come back to the house, put on a Crowded House album, say, I'm going to put a baked potato in the oven. It will be ready in an hour. Shall I go down on you until it's ready? Reader, I married him.
Yeah. So did I. Bad men. So we talk about bad men an awful lot, and I think
Yes.
lots of women talk to each other about bad men. We've certainly had considerable mileage out of it. But there are clear and present danger, aren't they? And as Dolly in the book finds to her cost with this comedian who's in no way based on a real person, either dead or alive.
Yes.
And you describe them as vampires, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Explain that.
Well, there's a definite trope. They are, I've observed them over the years and I've been out with some of them, and they have a thing where one of the reasons that vampires are still such a recurrent trope in popular culture is that they are real and they are out there. This is why we keep coming back to it. And it's not that they suck blood from girls. They suck your energy out of you and they get high on your anxiety. They love making women unhappy and anxious, and it's almost as if they huff your fear and anxiety like cocaine. They get high on it. That's the thing that they want. They want to make women unhappy. And the way that you can recognize them, A, they'll be wearing a hat or a frock coat. B, they'll be listening to Frank Zappa. And C, they'll be on the edges of parties, just looking a bit sad and misunderstood. And they will wait until you are separated from a pack, or they see that you don't have any friends yet because you've just moved to the city, and they will move in on you, and they will do some kind of negging bants with you. They'll be kind of teasing you and stuff. And because you're a young girl and you don't want to be a drip, you become some kind of feisty dame. And you
become a cool girl, don't you?
Yes, you become a cool girl.
Yeah.
And you start kind of like, and they'll test you to see. I did an event last night with the brilliant Labour MP, Jess Phillips, and we were talking about this, and she's just absolutely fucking brilliant. She out-vag talked to me last night. It was quite extraordinary. She told a story about her sphincter, which ended the gig. I had to go, we're not going to top that tonight. That's the end of tonight.
I mean, I just feel like this is fighting talk.
I know. But she was saying, yes, when I was a young girl, I would pretend that I was really into anal sex. And I also pretended that I was really into rap, to the point where I learnt all the lyrics off the first NWA album. And I am in no way into rap or anal sex. So now I'm old enough to admit that. Hurrah, that's the end of that. And I'm loving the fact at the moment there's this kind of backlash to being the cool girl who says they're into everything. I've seen recently Amy Schumer and Tina Fey and I think Sarah Silverman all say, what I'm really into is vanilla sex. Like kind of, I'm going to stop pretending that I'm into all this sort of hanging off the chandeliers and anal sex and kind of like, I'd just like to lie down on the bed and be slightly and pleasantly crushed by a man who is built like a womble in a cardigan. That is, why should it be any more complicated than that?
But, I mean, if only that came out of the Metoo movement, that would be incredible, wouldn't it?
Yes.
We were talking recently about how you saw Stacey Solomon on a panel show.
Yes.
And explain that, because I thought that was absolutely perfect in terms of what I would want for younger girls.
Yeah, no, she did the same thing. Kind of, she was on Celebrity Juice, which does get a bit cool girly. Kind of, that is slightly the vibe there. You know, they're always teasing Holly Willoughby about having bukkake on her face. It's like she's a lovely daytime TV presenter. We don't need to define her this way. And Stacey Solomon just chipped up and just went, yeah, I just like normal sex. I just like lovely sex. I was like,
yeah.
that is quite revolutionary. She also, I love Stacey Solomon. She also did an interview recently where, you know, there's in the gossip magazines, which are basically Body Hate Weekly, because every interview they do with a woman is always like, what's your least favourite part of your body? What's your diet regime? When are you going to lose the baby weight? And she just went, I like all of my body and I think I'm a nice person.
She is a nice person. She's literally the nicest person.
She's absolutely lovely, isn't she? She's one of the women that my husband has a crush on. Whenever she comes,
he does his little face.
Yeah, he does his little face. He's like this. Lisa Tarbuck and Stacey Solomon, he does his little face. Oh, and Darcy Bustle, weirdly. I wouldn't.
That's quite off-brand, isn't it?
I know, a delicate ballerina, but he even, we've still got it on our Sky Plus box. There's a documentary about Darcy Bustle that he's just kept there for
one
the last
for the wank
6 months.
bank.
Literally. Shall I leave you alone to watch that?
Yeah, I did tell Stacey Solomon that Pete fancied her, and she went, oh, really? She was so chuffed.
Oh, yeah. Lovely Stacey Solomon.
Yeah, she was absolutely amazed. What does the writing process look like for you? Because when you were writing this book, you were quite stressed because you were trying to do 100 other things. So how do you go about writing a book? Do you have a set schedule? Are you fully storyboarded? Tell me what happens from the moment you decide what you're writing.
I look at my deadline and then my mortgage, and I get on with it. I simply roll a series of cigarettes and a coffee, get a big pot of coffee. I sit outside because I will not smoke in the house, and I was writing this all the way through the winter when it was snowing on me. So I covered myself in 3 fake fur leopard skin coats, and I looked like an extra from Game of Thrones guarding the wall. And I typed away.
I've come round sometimes, and you're like Hagrid in the background, like fully sort of 20 layers on.
900. It's a glamorous job, writing. The main thing about I find writing, I find it generally, I don't talk to other writers about writing because they're all very much the pain of the blank page and kind of rah, rah, rah. And I'm just like, I just go like this. I find writing really, it's my easiest thing to do. I become physically aroused when I write. I get a slight tingle in my tits and my knees feel quite warm. I'm just sitting there typing going, this is lovely. Makes you very happy because I learned a trick a long time ago. I always knew I wanted to be a writer, and I always knew I wanted to write films and TV shows and books. But when I started out, it was like, but what can I write about? Because I looked at all the art that existed, and it was like, well, I don't have a story like, films are a teenage boy finds he has a magical power, the Force, and then he blows up a Death Star. I don't have a story like that. Like, how can I get into the man world? I don't fit there. And then in my late 20s, after a very difficult birth where I was on a lot of very wiggy pain medication, I had some kind of epiphany and I pivoted over here 160 degrees and realized that what I needed to be writing about was the stuff that hadn't been written about. That's endless. Once you start seeing all the kinds of girls that you've never seen before, the kind of conversations that you've never seen before, the topics that you've never seen covered, suddenly you've got your entire lifetime's work done for you. And whenever anybody asks me for advice about writing, I'm just like, find the things that haven't been written about. That's how you make your market. That's how you find your space. If you want to be a writer, it's a difficult world to find work out there. But if you're writing about the things that no one else will write about, and my particular speciality is taboos and secrets. I love a taboo, I love a secret. If there's something that's shameful and awful that you're not supposed to talk about, I'm running towards it with a torch, just going, yay! That's where I'll be for the next 2 years. See you in the shame well. I'll be digging my way out with my words.
But you've said in the past that there's nothing worse than having to think and write simultaneously,
Yes.
and I agree with that. There's nothing more terrifying than to sit down and write something you haven't thought through. So are you collecting lines, jokes?
Oh God, yeah.
Constantly?
Yes, no, the notes. I mean, I've got the next 3 books planned. So the next book will be a sequel to How to Be a Woman called More Than a Woman, because Lauren Laverne gave me the subtitle for that last week. So it's sort of like the years between your 30s and 40s, just a whole load of other. If you think adolescence is difficult, wait for your 30s and 40s. And she supplied me with the subtitle More Than a Woman because this shit just gets worse. So that will be the next book, and then the book after that's a novel, and the main thing I'm doing at the moment is the film. We started shooting our film this week. It's amazing. So excited. I can't, so the people that we've announced in it
Yes, please take us through the roll call of men we'd like to have sex with that you've made be in your film.
I know, I've been sending a lot of emails. So the people that we've announced so far, sadly I can't tell you a lot of the people who are involved in it, but so far we've got Beanie Feldstein from Lady Bird, who, if anybody's seen Lady Bird, will know she's amazing. She's playing the young me, which is incredible. And John Kite, her rock star love, is being played by Alfie Allen from Game of Thrones, who we last saw having his penis cut off. I've been assured that he's sewn it back on now. I'm hoping it will play a cameo role in the background at some point. Who else? I think that's all we can announce at the moment, but we've got to write the songs that John Kite will be singing. My favourite band of the last 10 years have written his songs, and they sent me the song last week, and I just burst into tears. It's so beautiful. And then the conceit is that she has, as you do when you're a teenage girl, posters of all her heroes on the wall, and they animate and give her advice when she's having some kind of dilemma. And I simply wrote letters to all my heroes and went, will you play cameo roles as Sigmund Freud and Elizabeth Taylor and Germaine Greer and Karl Marx? And they've all said yes. And one of the people I love most in the world sent me a picture of himself yesterday dressed up as Sigmund Freud, and that's one for the wank bank.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realise we couldn't say who they all were. So when you go to the cinema, you'll realise all the people we want to have sex with will just appear.
But why would you make a film full of people that you don't want to have sex with?
Yes.
That's the writer's privilege. But I've realised why so few women are involved in the film industry and so few British people are generally involved in the film industry, and it's because making a film is a massive hoo-ha. It's a huge fuss. You just get loads of emails with people going, we've just had to find a bus from 1993 and fill it with period-accurate extras. And we're flying people over from America and they're having to learn Wolverhampton accents. So I just spend all my time going, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I've put you to all this trouble and fuss. I'm so sorry. That's all I'm doing at the moment is apologising for the hoo-ha.
So this film is How to Build a Girl. So this is the first book. So tonight, the book that you have, and if you don't have one yet, it's included in your tickets. You must get one from over there.
Yes, the books are free. Take books from
yeah,
shelf.
your book is included. So this How to Be Famous, the new book, is a sequel to How to Build a Girl. So we're back with Dolly Wilde, the young music writer. Again, I just don't know where you find your inspiration. So we're back with her, and as you say, the whole thing explodes at a time when, you know, the Mary Whitehouse experience of playing Wembley, and you know, comedy is a massive thing. Britpop is obviously exploding. And although it's essentially a book about love and sex, it's also hugely about fame.
Yes, and fandom. So it's set in 1994 at the start of Britpop, and it was, I do feel sorry for young people, because it was a great time to be a young person.
It was a super time,
the start of Britpop. Like, the beginning of Britpop was amazing. It seemed like it was never winter. For 2 years, it felt there was no winter. It was always summer. It was always sunny. There was always a new brilliant song on the radio. It would cost you £10 to go out and get drunk. Cigarettes were very cheap, so it was easy to kill yourself for under a tenner. We didn't wear makeup in those days. You probably did, but...
Well, no, I mean, maybe a red lip. But no, we all had like backpacks and bunches,
yes,
and Adidas Gazelles and denim miniskirts and football shirts and stuff. It was quite a low maintenance, wasn't it?
Totally.
And every day felt like a Saturday in a beer garden with friends, didn't
Yes.
it? It was that kind of vibe.
It was an absolute hoot. And but what happened during Britpop, so sort of the 2 years before, the music scene, the alternative indie music scene in London was very small and very lovely. And I found as a teenage girl going down, like lots of people have gone, you know, kind of like, you know, you're hanging out with rock stars as a 16-year-old girl in London. Like, what was that like? Were they horrible? Were you being predated on? No, they were all lovely working class progressive boys who would take you down the pub and want to talk about philosophy and literature, and they would look after you. When people did drugs in front of me when I was 16, you know, when you cover up your homework, you know, your schoolwork at school so people can't copy and they go like that so you can't see what they're writing, they would take drugs like that, just so I couldn't see, in order to protect my innocence. Obviously, I guessed what they were doing there. And they would just really look after you. It was a very sweet, friendly scene. And then Britpop took off, and it started to get dark quite quickly, because all the money came in, all the drugs started off. And there was a recurrent trope with quite a few bands that they'd started off indie and small, then they had these big breakthrough albums, and suddenly they got teenage girl fans. And so many of them reacted to this really badly. They were horrified that there was suddenly, you know, 10,000 girls coming and screaming at them in gigs. And they would be teased about this. It was kind of as if they weren't cool anymore, just because teenage girls loved them.
And was it to do with the Beatles, do you think? I think there is this sort of, this feeling that, oh, well, we can't like that because it drove the Beatles crazy because they couldn't hear themselves play anymore. It's become a kind of disrespectful thing, hasn't
Totally,
it?
but they've completely misunderstood what happened with the Beatles. Like, the Beatles were given a mandate. When you've had, like, you know, millions of girls screaming at you, that allows you to do anything. You know you've got your crew behind you. And I love, you know, I watch all the Beatles films over and over again, and you see something different every time you see them. And for years, I'd watched that footage of teenage girls screaming at Shea Stadium. And everyone always says very dismissively and kind of horrified. And they were screaming so much, A, the band couldn't hear themselves, and B, the girls were pissing themselves, and the seats were covered in urine afterwards. That's so disgusting. And, you know, I'd always gone along with that. And the last time I watched those girls screaming, I was like, no, this is magnificent. You know, at this point in the 60s, the girls are all still dressed like their mums in, like, Far Side glasses and twin sets. And for the first time ever, they're in a stadium full of girls who all look like them, who are all the same age. It's the first time they've ever been in a room with as many, you know, girls who look like them the same age. And, yeah, they're screaming at the Beatles, but mainly they're screaming at each other. This is a total brilliant feral animal thing of like, God, we're here, feel this power. It's the first time teenage girls have all been together and do something. And the power in them at that point, if they'd wanted to storm the stage or set fire to that fucking stadium, nothing would have been able to stop them. And they knew that power. And that same power, that electricity, if you talk to anyone who's been on stage, you know, the kind of reaction you get off an audience, it enables you to do something incredible. If I'd rather, you know, talk to any band, if they've got a choice between having 30 cool blokes at the back standing there with their arms folded going, that's a nice chord change, or 1,000 screaming girls, of those two nights, they're going to perform better in front of 1,000 screaming girls. It gives you wings, it's electricity. I read this brilliant fact recently that apparently when you're at a gig, everybody's heartbeats synchronize. So when you're at somewhere like Glastonbury and you're going, God, this is an amazing moment, I feel like I'm part of this crowd, you actually are. Everybody's heartbeats synchronise within 2 or 3 minutes of the band coming on stage. We are all beating with one collective heart. And there is something really magic about fandom. So I really wanted to defend that in the book, because quite a few...
you really go into bat for these girls in the book, don't you? There's a defining moment between Dolly and John Kite where Dolly goes into bat for these girls and says, this is the good stuff. This is the best kind of love you can have.
Well, yeah, we'll never reject love. How could you reject love? And so many of the bands that were around at that time reacted to having teenage fans, and they just made sure that their next albums were inaccessible and horrible, skronking electronic awfulness, like kind of like in order to try and deliberately get rid of their teenage fans. And they would talk to me, I'd be friends with them, and they would talk to me and just be like, oh, I don't like the teenage girl fans. It's like, I am a teenage girl fan. Like, these are my girls. This is my people. How would you ever become so profligate and privileged that you would reject love? That's the craziest thing you can do.
But fame does really weird things to people, doesn't it?
Yes.
Are you somebody who believes that people's development is arrested the moment they become famous? They stop at that moment.
Yes. No, you very much see that. I can't name names, but like people who've got famous in boy bands at a very early age, you see that they sort of stick at that level of development. But the weird thing about fame is that, like, I've worked out how famous I am. I'm about 17% famous, kind of, out of 100. Like, kind of, I'll be recognised in very specific places. Like, if it's a vegan health food shop and I'm buying a flapjack, I will be recognised there. If it's a girl who's wearing eyeliner, she'll probably know who I am. If I'm in a library or a gay club, I will be recognised, I'll be given priority service. If I'm in LK Bennett in Cheltenham, not a sausage. So
No.
I know where my people are.
You're arrested for shoplifting.
Yes. Just going to take these Theresa May-like shoes. Thank you very much. I can observe. My favourite thing that's ever happened with being famous, I was once on a train, and there were a group of about 15, 14-year-old girls, and they saw me, and they came running down the train, screaming to the terror of everybody else in the train, and went, Caitlin, we read about masturbation in your book, and we started masturbating. We formed a masturbation club. Every morning when we come into school, we say how often we did it last night. Can I shake your hand? I promise it's not dirty. I loved that. Unfortunately, my 2 children who were with me at the time didn't like it at all.
No, you broke them.
No, they did not enjoy that at all. But the weird thing about fame is, like, so I had to do a photo shoot for the Times for the book about how to be famous, and they were like, okay, we're going to shoot you being famous. And then we realized we had a massive dilemma, because how do you show fame in a picture? There's no way to show it. Like, you can't be famous. In the end, I dressed up like some famous people. I dressed like Marilyn Monroe and Audrey Hepburn. Actually, the Marilyn Monroe shoot was agonizing. So I'm in the most iconic white dress of all time ever, and they're sticking hairdryers sort of up to do that kind of she's over the event, being sexy thing. And my period had started unexpectedly 5 days earlier. And so I had to talk to the makeup girls, who were all really, really young, and say, I'm really sorry, can you go to the chemist and get me some tampons? And they came back, because they're very young, with a tiny thing, such as a fairy would use.
A pink one.
Tiny.
Who uses the pink ones?
The kind of thing that could block a tear duct, but nothing else. I was like...
Clean my ear out with that.
Yeah. It's like, girls, I'm 43, I've had 2 children. Get me something the size of a badger with a rope attached to it. Let's go for this. But that's the thing, you can't really be famous. Fame isn't in you. Fame is in the minds of people who know who you are. That's what it is. Fame is like a kind of, like an ergo spore that infects the brains of people who know you. They recognize you, they know who you are. The fame is in those people's heads. It's not, I can't be famous. When I was talking to Ben, I interviewed Benedict Cumberbatch last week, a couple of weeks ago. Whenever the call comes, I say yes. And I just said to him, sort of like, how much time have you spent being famous today? And he went, what do you mean? I was like, how much time have you spent being famous today? He was like, well, I got up, I had my breakfast, that wasn't famous. I watched telly for a bit with my kids, that wasn't being famous there. I got recognised by the cab driver, so I guess I was famous for about 7 minutes. And then before I came in here, someone recognised me and asked for a picture. So I guess I've been famous for about 10 minutes today in total. And that's Benedict Cumberbatch. Like, kind of, it's, fame is very fleeting, and it only takes up a very tiny amount of your time.
It also does strange things to people, doesn't it? The people in How to Be Famous, and the people you're talking about who you knew in real life, in bands at that time, fame did strange things to them. I don't think people necessarily know how to cope with it instinctively. It's very rare that you go, they're very good at being famous.
Yes.
Charlotte Church is good at being famous.
She's
There's only
brilliant.
some people where I go, okay, you seem to be handling this shit well. Like, you seem to be on top of this, but it's quite rare.
I don't, and that's because she stayed in Wales.
Because she
and
stayed
had,
in Wales.
Friends and her family around her. And
She's got solid birds around her.
She just lives her great life. You see, the conceit in the book is that Dolly sees all these people that she knows becoming famous, famous, and she decides she's going to become a fame doctor. And she starts writing a column for The Face, giving advice to famous people, partly as a way to win John Kite's heart, but also as a way to pay the rent, because bitch got to pay rent is the alpha and omega of everything. And so she's giving all this advice, sort of like, you know, what you should do when you're famous, because you don't know how to cope with it. There's usually a sort of like arc that's very recognizable. People are usually in denial about being famous for the first 2 years. And then there'll be the cocaine phase. You can always tell when people have started taking cocaine because they usually dye their hair very bright blonde, particularly men, almost as if they're trying to make their head look like some cocaine. Then they start wearing frock coats. When you interview them around about this point, you will get on with them really well, and they'll be like, you'll do the interview, and then you'll do drinks, and then they'll be like, yeah, let's carry on the night, come back to my place, and they'll be really confessional, you'll be up till dawn, and you'll kind of really bond with them and stuff, and you'll go back and write this thing going, this person has been really unaffected by fame, they're still really friendly and lovely, this is amazing, this guy's a great guy. And then 2 weeks later, you'll see in the papers that they've been taken off to rehab, and you realise...
With exhaustion.
Yes, you realise they weren't being friendly at all, they were absolutely off their tits. And at that point you think, well, I live my life like that all the time. Does that mean that I should go to rehab too? And the answer is no. You're poor. You don't go to rehab. You just do what Blanche from Coronation Street does, which is close the front door, pour a gin and bite down on a shoe.
So in all this madness, Dolly goes through this humiliation, also this mad love she feels that she's not sure is requited. And actually what starts rebuilding her and inspiring her to fix everything is female friendship.
Yes. Well, that was another thing I really wanted to write about. One of the reasons why the original Ghostbusters is one of the greatest films of all time ever is that the plot of that is it's some men who are just doing a job. They don't go on a journey or a quest, they're just doing their job, busting ghosts. And they're friends, and the friendship group never breaks up. The plot of nearly every film is if you've got some friends at the beginning, they have to have a massive falling out 3/4 of the way through, and then they have to get back together again and stuff. And the Ghostbusters stay friends throughout. And similarly, when people are writing about female friendships, there always has to be a point where they fall out over a bloke, and like there's a kind of big thing, and they get back together again. I've never experienced that with any of my female friends. Never had a bust up with any of my female friends. We just carry on being friends because that's what friends are. And so I wanted to write about a friendship where there was no breaking up at all. And she's got an older feminist mentor called Suzanne Banks. And there was a part of me that always wanted to be a rock star, which was curtailed by the fact that my singing voice sounds like an injured wolf being hit by a goose. So in Suzanne Banks, I've written what I would have been like if I was a rock star, partly influenced by Courtney Love. So Suzanne Banks says that she's 25, but she's actually 31, because you have to lie about your age if you're in a band. I seem to remember Courtney Love celebrating the 3rd anniversary of her 27th birthday at one point.
I think I'm the... Jerry Halliwell, I think, is the only person who's been older than me, the same age as me, and now younger than me. At various points in her career, she's been all of the ages.
That is girl power, the ability to affect time with your mind. Hi, see ya, hold tight. So Suzanne Banks is this older feminist mentor, and because I thought I've never read about that, like kind of usually women have to be at each other's throats, and just this older woman comes along, and because this awful relationship has happened for Dolly, and she doesn't know how to feel about it for a while, and gradually she starts to feel angry. She's never been angry before in her life, because girls are told not to be angry. It's dangerous to be angry, and she gradually starts to feel angry about it. And there's this brilliant moment where Suzanne Banks takes her hand and goes, "Today's the day you got your angry wings. This is the greatest day in a girl's life when you finally own and possess your anger." And she's a brilliant mentor all the way through it. And I just wanted to write about that kind of female friendship where they're helping each other out while still having crazy, ridiculous times. Obs.
I hope you have questions, because we've got quite a nice spell now for questions. You can ask Caitlin literally anything. I mean, obviously, my extensive agenda covered all matters.
We've done fannies, we've done sex stuff, and we've done Dick Advisor.
Yes, exactly. We've done fannies, willies, and sex. So there are other things in the world that you may ask us about. And I think there are roving mics. Yes, there are roving mics. So if you raise your hand, a mic will find you, and you can ask your question.
And it's important that you ask questions, because until I get asked a question, I sing, and my song of choice is Wuthering Heights, which is piercing, and it begins now.
Don't make that happen. Okay,
Winding more, we fold and
shut it down. Here.
You had a okay.
Hello.
No, she's talking now.
Hi. My name's Sophia.
Hello.
I just wondered if there's going to be any more Raised by Wolves.
Oh, mate, the question that makes me sad. No, we very much wanted there to be more Raised by Wolves. We were the third highest rating sitcom on Channel 4. We won that Palme d'Or as the best comedy in Europe, against a lot of Spanish mime. But yeah, no, sadly, it's a cruel old industry. See me picking my fingernails here whilst being careful about this. It's a cruel old industry, and a decision was made not to have it anymore, which we're very sad about. But they live on in our hearts, and me and my sister met together last week, having finally stopped arguing with each other about why it got axed, and decided that we're going to possibly at some point make it into a musical. So we can't think of anything. It became very obvious to us that Grampy would be obsessed by Raw by Katy Perry, and would just sing at moments of crisis. So we're hoping, once we get the clearance from Katy Perry, to turn it into a musical at some point.
I just miss Rebecca Staten on the telly. She's just so amazing in it. She needs a starring role in something else.
She's absolutely extraordinary. She treated that script, which was basically just a load of dick gags, like Shakespeare. Her noting on the whole thing was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, she's absolutely extraordinary.
And I loved how we found Helen Monks, who played me, Jermaine. I'd done a book event about 10 years ago, and she'd come up to me to get her book signed, and I went, God, you really look like you could be a Moran, like you have the same face. And she went, yes, I am an actor. Here is my phone number. If you ever make anything where you need a Moran-faced person, let me know. And then we did the casting for Raised by Wolves, and she turned up, and we went, you would be perfect, but like you are a very thin girl, and Jermaine will need to be big. And she went, don't worry about that, and held up a Tesco carrier bag in which she'd hired a sumo wrestling suit from a fancy dress shop. And she just popped off the toilets, put it on, put a dress over the top, and we're like, you're hired.
Any other questions? There is a hand here, but if the next person wants to raise their hand, yes, okay. So here and here, stack them up.
Yeah.
In the spirit of unlocking taboos, what do you think's the biggest taboo the world needs to pop right open right now?
Oh, blimey, that's hard. Because if I
People
thought
should
of it,
talk
I would
about the
want to be
menopause,
on it.
right?
Oh, the
That's-
menopause would be a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is seen as a dry old subject, literally, vaginally, often. I'm really hoping my menopause happens before I have to write this next book. I'm kind of like, bring it on. Bring on this biological cataclysm, because I need copy. So if anybody knows any way to induce the menopause, I have no need for my womb nor ovaries anymore. I've made my children. I'm all over there. This shop is shut. So if anybody knows a way to bring on the menopause so I can write about it, I would be enormously pleased to hear about it. But stuff like aging, things, I don't know if there's any more taboos anymore, but there's so many things that are seen of as dull. The challenge in the next book will be to try and write about them in an interesting way. Like one of the big feminist sort of campaigns that there's always been trying to make care work paid, looking after parents, looking after children, looking after ill people who are mentally or physically ill is unpaid work, but this is what keeps the world going. And every time the feminist campaign tries to address this, everyone's just like, oh, go away, women, stop this now. So I'm going to try and find a way to make that good. The other thing I really want to do is try and find a way to write about yoga without sounding like a dullard, ning-nang-nonga kind of mad hippie arse. I keep trying to make Sally do yoga. You're very resistant at the moment, aren't you? It's not. You're like, no. No.
I can't do sportswear, first of all.
Is that your primary objection to it? The outfit would be unpleasant.
Well, I think I could do what you do. So to explain what you do, you wake up in the morning and you roll out your mat and you do it in the living room while the dog walks around. Now, I could do that.
Yes.
I could do that. I couldn't go to like a class with other people.
Oh, no, that's horrible.
I once went to Pilates and people kept farting really loudly around me. So that put me off Pilates. But I could possibly do what you do. Well, you've hooked me up, haven't you, with your online
Yeah, there's
instructor.
a brilliant girl called Adrienne who does free videos. She's amazing. She's just this little stoner from Texas who just goes, do it because it feels good. Yes, I can sign up to that. Don't worry about the outfit. I do it naked, usually, to the great distress of my children. So you're not signed up for that, are you?
I'm not signed up for that. No, I will do it because I do think, because I've never been an exerciser. I've never worked out in my life. I've never gone to gyms or anything like that. I just don't do that stuff. I find it really boring. But as I've got older, I do sort of envy the endorphin rush that you get from people seem very happy and blissful after
It just makes you very, very stoned. I mean, that would be the recommendation that I would do it for. You feel very, very high at the end of it. Similarly with jumping into cold lakes, I think very often women are not in their bodies. It takes you a very long time to actually be in your body. If you'd asked me at any point up until about 3 years ago where my body was, I would say it's about 3 miles away and I might see it in about 10 years' time. I just very much felt that I was a brain in a jar with some legs down here that occasionally needed maintenance, like kind of. And the thing about yoga, and the only time I ever felt that I was in my body was when I was having sex or taking drugs or giving birth. You really come into your body at that point. And the great thing about yoga is that it just puts you in your body. It's a thing that's done for pleasure. You're not pleasing anybody else. And just that, there's something very revolutionary about women just making themselves happy on their own. Like kind of, these are things we don't talk about, joy. Because that is the point of all the activism and feminism and all these things. You know, you're not doing it because it's like sort of like moral fiber that you're sort of chewing on. You know, you don't do it to be worthy. You do it because once we've sorted out all of this inequality bullshit, we will have more time to be joyful. And this is the point of being alive. And we so rarely talk particularly about female joy. We see our lives as a to-do list. We see ourselves as like, as sort of duty maidens doing all these things to service other people. Any time that a woman is doing something that makes her happy, not in a kind of self-care way, like having a lovely bubble bath, that'll just give you thrush. I'm just talking about things that will actually, on a day-to-day basis, just make you walk around going, my body's awesome. My hamstrings are stretched. I am a galaxy inside all of my relaxed muscles. I am very high right now. It is fabulous to be alive. And this is, I think, this is the next step in the revolution.
You are bringing me ever closer. You are. Also, I got sent a Chanel yoga mat last week, so I might do it. But you are getting me closer to the day.
That's
to the
so
day.
Hughes.
I'm getting there.
Chanel yoga mat. Talking of breaking wind, as I've been going on this tour and talking to all the people from all the local bookshops who've been running the bookstores and doing an amazing job, I always ask them what their job's like and stuff, and the recurrent theme about bookshops, it seems, is that people come into them to break wind. Apparently people just walk into bookshops, and as soon as they walk into bookshops, start farting.
Borders on Oxford Street, when it used to be there, they in the end closed the toilets because apparently people go to bookshops to poo.
Yes. And also, in several bookshops that I was talking to people from, they were the places where people would often have sex. Or store booze in the polystyrene tiles. There was a lot of that. And one person removed the polystyrene tile from the toilet in a bookshop and found a chicken that someone had had sex with. And they were at pains to say, when I was sort of wincing, going, mate, that's horrible. That doesn't sound like the literary trade that I know. They were at pains to say, but it was cooked, as if that made it better. That doesn't make it better. That's horrible.
Where I grew up in the Welsh Valleys, everybody in the school holidays used to work in a pie factory, and I remember one time a man was sacked for having sex with a pie.
Oh, men.
I mean, we're literally in church, so let's move on.
I love that can-do attitude. It's either lunch or a shag. Maybe it could be both.
There is a lady so far at the back, she is standing up.
Yes.
Does somebody else want to raise their hand and get a mic?
Hello. I just want to talk about how you can make a menopausal woman famous, number one. And number two, your next novel, as you're just talking about, can it be about menopausal women?
See, I need to go through the menopause to do this.
I don't know where this voice is coming from. Yes. Could you raise your hand? It's confused. Okay,
Hello.
You.
I am just so waiting for my menopause. It's the next load of copy that I need delivered to me now. So as soon as I've experienced it, I don't want to glom off anybody else's experience. I don't want to be kind of like faking my hot flushes. I need to have experienced them for myself. So believe me, as soon as I start my menopause, you will know about it, because I'll suddenly get 15 books off the back of it. But no, I'm
It does need writing about,
totally,
though.
yeah.
It desperately needs writing about, because I feel like it's this thing that you have to wait until you're in it before you're allowed to know anything. Nobody writes it. People don't commission it. I'm sure people write about it, but nobody commissions those pieces.
Well, it's also that phase in your life as well. So the phases are still that you are virgin, then you are mother. So you're virgin, then you have your whore years, then you become a mother, then hopefully if you still have a good marriage, you whore a bit more. And then you go hag. And I'm really looking forward to my hag years.
The commune years.
Yes. I'm very much looking to growing my hair really long and white like Madam Mim, and living in a cave with a lot of cats, making potions, gradually becoming angrier and angrier. And then eventually I will start going on Have I Got News For You and scaring young white male comedians. That's my Marxist feminist dialectic. I'll have a huge staff and I'll bang it down on the ground whenever they say something bancy and go, no! And scare them. That's my plan.
You hate, sorry to interrupt the question,
Yes.
but you talking about Have I Got News For You, you hate doing telly. You always turn telly down, don't you?
Yes.
Appearing on it. It's very rare that I know you agree.
Yes.
Why
no.
do you hate doing telly?
Well, I mean, most of it is not designed for women. Like something like Have I Got News For You, I've been like, oh, yes, hurrah. Wow, someone's pills have kicked in. I feel your rush. Friday night. No, something like Have I Got News for You? Like kind of like it's built for men. It's built for a male rhythm, the combative thing. It's like a competition. It's got that kind of Oxford Debating Society thing to it. It's kind of, it's certain backgrounds. It favours certain senses of humour. It's not the female sense of humour, which is more communal, in the round, rambling, anecdotal, kind of like bringing the best out in each other. And so if you go on something like that is designed for men, it's basically like a woman using a men's urinal. Like kind of, it's built for a man. I could try and use it, but I would not look elegant as I was using it, and I would end up with piss on my shoes. That's kind of, I'd be in a very inelegant squatting position comedically. So I will not do TV. And also, I really don't want to be any more recognised than I am now. Like the whole job of being a writer is that you need to observe what people are doing. And if you are famous, you change the atmosphere in a room. So then you don't get to observe people anymore. So as a consequence, I've turned everything down, including Celebrity Big Brother. Do you know how much you get offered for Celebrity Big Brother? £300,000. And they told me that I could leave after 12 days. They were like, you can just fake an illness and leave. I was like, well, I know what illness I would fake. It would be cystitis. I'm very good at that.
It's very easy to fake. Nobody would ever know.
Exactly. You just sit in the toilet for 12 days going, yeah, it's burning down there,
Yeah.
and then simply leave with your cash. And
Yeah.
it took me less than a second to reject that. I said I would rather cut my head off and kick it over the fence than appear on that. Thank you very much.
There could be nothing worse than that.
No,
I could
it'd be
never.
horrible, wouldn't it? Yeah. It'd be like the worst caravan holiday ever with relatives you hated.
You're not allowed to take books even.
I know,
You're not allowed to do
crazy.
anything.
Well, it's the same thing with Love Island. Like, I watch them on there. Like, I don't know. Is anyone who's watching Love Island? Hands up.
Caitlin loves Love Island.
Be truthful. Everyone is lying. You're all watching. Come on, there's more people. Come on. Be true. Thank you. And the others that are lying. Come on, yes, put your hands up. Thank you. So lots of people have said, like, kind of, why are you watching Love Island? That is just dim people in their pants having crises about small life issues. First of all, in this heat, we are all people in our pants having crises about small life issues. And secondly, it's the best feminist jumping off board I could possibly imagine for my daughters. However much I try and write about, sex and positivity and feminism and stuff in my books, the two teenagers that will never read them are my daughters, because no one wants to read mummy's books about wanking. That is fair enough. So I can never have these conversations with them, but we sit and watch Love Island, and at the moment there's some bad men in there, and they're being classically bad. And it's like a documentary of all the things you need to avoid in a man. I can freeze frame the screen and go, if you see this smug expression on a man's face, I'm talking about Adam here, obviously. A man who has spent so much time in the gym, it's like he's weaponized his body to cause the maximum emotional damage in women. It's like kind of he's a bullet of hatred. And I can just pause and just walk away from men like this. And to the point where Women's Aid wrote a brilliant piece about it for The Pool, just going, he has so far used 8 out of the 12 sort of like, pre-abusive and abusive techniques that men use on women. Where else are we going to have these conversations? Like, this is why I love popular culture.
Those shows are good for it. First Dates is good for it. I've got 2 sons, obviously, and quite often, the girl who gets the hump over the man not paying, I'm like, that's the girl you don't want to go out with. She's an arsehole.
Not.
You don't want to go out with her. And those programmes are good, aren't they, for showing you a map of
Well, particularly with teenage boys, like one of the recurrent questions I've been asked is like, okay, you talk about women a lot, but like, what about the boys? And for years I had Jess Phillips's line on this, which is like, I'm busy with the women, you fucking sort the men out. I've got a job, why do women have to sort men out? But I'm increasingly thinking that we will have to, because for the last 120 years, for women, we have had all these progresses. We've talked about the idea of being a woman, our ideas have expanded, our possibilities have expanded. We know how to network, we know how to talk to each other, we know how to bring forth these new ideas. We're very supportive. We still know that the whole idea of being a woman is in its very infancy and it's going to continue changing. It's exciting to be a woman. I would not want to swap genders for £1 million, or unless they pitch a show where you actually do that, in which case I'll give it a go. But in that same time, the idea of what it is to be a man has not changed at all. And you can see that now. You see sort of young teenage boys now, and kind of like, we've had massive escalating crises in like sort of like, mental health and anxiety.
Suicide.
Young boys really looking for role models and men to step forward and do what we have done with feminism. Write books about the bad things about being a boy, the things that embarrass you, the things that shame you, the things that, that you think you're going to have to keep secret, the worries that you have, the ideas of a brighter future. And nothing like that is happening for men. To the point where...
Nothing nothing progressive.
No.
The men's movement is regressive.
Yes, totally.
And so the progressive men need to step up, because the most popular men's movement now is a regressive. If women stopped messing about with the silly feminism stuff and went back to what they were doing, then we would all be fine and everyone would be happy again.
Yes.
Is that Jordan Peterson sort of
No,
thing?
totally, yeah. So, we need this, this is, one of the things I want to do is just, issue an open invitation to men. If you're good men out there who have ideas, if you feel constrained about your masculinity, if there are secrets that you have and things that you worry about, you need to start writing books. We need to start making films about this. I love the fact that we've got a female doctor on Doctor Who. That's amazing. It makes my life. But that was the only male role model that we had for young boys, of a pacifist, geeky, brilliant, witty, hot man that wasn't just some kind of buff man just smashing up another city in another Avengers movie. And we've lost that now. These are the jobs of culture, not politics. Writers, comedians, actors. These are the people who need to be addressing this now. Not least because it would be very lucrative. I mean, I am genuinely thinking about putting on a beard and writing my big man's book in a couple of years' time. Like, fuck it, if the men aren't going to do it, let the ladies take over.
Yeah, that book is ready to be written for sure.
Yes.
I think somebody still has a mic who hasn't had their go yet, and then I will... Hello.
Yes. And then that's probably that's going to be the last question, isn't it, I think? Is it?
I think there's a couple more minutes.
Oh, okay, cool.
So there's a lady here. Yeah, go on.
I'll be quick. Hi, Caitlin.
Hello.
Hello. My name is Karen. And I'm a mum raising the next generation of young women.
Nice one.
Thank you. So my 10-year-old is very much in a world of online bloggers, vloggers, all of that. And I want her to get the right messages. Do you have any advice or any inspiration in terms of the next great young female vloggers, bloggers that I could point her to that don't teach her about how to make slime or...
That's quite cool.
Oh my gosh.
Okay,
or
sorry. I haven't had to make slime, so I'm
winged-
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I immediately saw the look on your face and I was like, yeah, I could see how slime could be a problem. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Slime with glitter in it is, double whammy. It's horrible. So any young, cool women that I can point her in the right direction to would be greatly appreciated. Thank
Gosh,
you.
I don't know. Do you know any, Sal? Because the problem that I have with so much of what's sort of happening online, I generally think the internet is still an amazing thing. It allows us to connect, it allows us to share information. But the one thing that I noticed, and again, if you look at rates with sort of mental health, anxiety, body image issues, eating disorders that are happening amongst young women at the moment, it's all very about being. It's about being observed. It's about photographing yourself perfectly. The body is a passive thing that must be taken from the right angle and sort of perfected. And that is a risky position to be in, particularly as a young girl. You need to be doing. You need to think of your body as a doing thing. You need to see it as a strong thing. I often say the best thing for young girls to do in order to feel good about their bodies is to learn how to kill a man with their bare hands. Go and learn some self-defense, do some judo, do some Krav Maga, become proud of your body, the things that it can do, be able to list all the achievements that your body's been able to make that day, jump into cold lakes and feel yourself present in your body, become strong, because if you're just a passive being thing that is simply there to be observed and rated and praised, that puts you in a very shaky position for the rest of your life. That's a very unstable foundation for you to build your psychology on. So I don't know any specific ones, but teach them to kill a man with their bare hands.
Jamila's doing cool stuff.
Oh, God, yes.
Jamila's doing really good stuff, I think. There are loads of people I can think of who are too old for your daughter if she's super young, but for young women, there are really good young adult writers. Juno Dawson's brilliant.
Yes.
Broad City is fantastic, but again, your child's too young. But for young women, Broad City, and what Broad City does, it's about two best friends who just love each other. They don't fall out, they don't feel jealous of each other, they don't feel threatened by one another. They're just really good mates.
And they're just very silly. And
they're silly.
Silly will keep you safe if you can boggle at the world and see the humour in the world, and see the humour in yourself. There's that saying about how if you don't realise how ridiculous you are, you might be missing out on the best joke in the world, and that's absolutely true. I am constantly amused by myself. I am the biggest clown in my head. But yeah, Jamil does this brilliant thing. There's a sort of recurrent thing now. I think all the Kardashians posted a picture with what their weight was over the head of each one, and Jamelia wrote a brilliant piece just going, "This is absolute bullshit. You are not what you weigh." And then she started this hashtag, which was, "I weigh my female friendships." the fact that I have done well at school, the fact that, I care for my dog, the fact that I paint these beautiful pictures, the fact that I've looked after my mother while she has cancer, like the idea that your weight is not your body weight, it's your achievements and your goodness and your brilliance. Yeah, Jamila Jamil is absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah,
I'd recommend that.
She's doing good stuff. And then there was that lady here, yeah. Oh, there's no mic forthcoming. Okay, it's coming. Bear with us. Just this lady here. She's about 1, 2, 3, 5 rows back.
Hello.
Hello.
Just picking up on what you were saying about making time to be joyful.
Yes.
And also about unchanging masculinity. I was wondering if, in general, you think women's lives are becoming more joyful, and do you think that women's lives are more joyful generally than men's lives?
That's a big one, isn't it? Yeah. I don't know. Well, let's see a show of hands on that. Who thinks women are happier than men? Okay, and then down. And who thinks men are happier than women? Okay, well, that's interesting. I noticed that kind of men will build time into their schedules to do something like going fishing. That's kind of, men's hobbies will be, I'm just going to go tinker in the shed, I'm just going to go fishing. Women tend not to schedule kind of time to just do nothing and look after themselves. But then is it that we have closer friendships, we can talk about our problems?
Friendships are key.
That's actually when I talk to men.
I think it's quite tough for men.
Yeah.
I think it's quite tough for little boys who are brought up not to be vulnerable, not to feel, not to, I think that's quite tough because women have an outlet with their other their other girlfriends.
Actually, that's a point as well. I've always found it really annoying, that recurring trope where there are writers, Martin Amis and Christopher Hitchens, both claimed that women weren't funny. They couldn't be funny. And first of all, that's incredibly rude to every girl they've ever gone out with, and also all the wives and girlfriends of all their friends. They're basically just saying, yeah, every dinner party I saw you at, you were just boring. And secondly, I genuinely believe women are funnier than men, because if you go into a pub and there's a table of men here and a table of women here, and they're both being funny, men will be telling their funny stories, and they'll just be going, oh, that's a nice one, Simon, yeah, that's great. Oh. Great trouser story, good bands. And then the women telling their funny stories will be just literally drumming their feet on the floor, going, no, stop, I'm going to pee myself, no, stop, Jesus Christ, no. Sliding under the table, losing their fucking minds. And it's because we have more things to laugh about, being a woman is this whole thing here. I've learnt to love it, but the uterus is a wibbly wobbly a blood bag full of chaos and pain. Your tits are just massive hassle magnets. You'll spend your entire life trying to work out what to do with your hair. All of this is funny. There is infinite material in it. So I think, yeah, being able to laugh at ourselves and the ridiculous of our lives is also our greatest joy.
So I have to tell you what's going to happen now. So with your ticket, you all got a book. I'm assuming that most of you already have your book. If you don't have your book, they are all over here and you can go and collect your book. They're all signed, yes?
My hand is so sore.
Every book is already signed. However, if you need a personal dedication, you can come and get one from Caitlin. However, you need to queue down this side. Caitlin's going to come forward here. You need to queue down this side. We can't serve you on this side of the bar, basically, is the situation. So please don't come down the middle. Please don't come from this side. Come around this side, and she will see you. If you want to speak to her briefly and get dedication. But thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good night. Thank you. Sali Hughes.